Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine, and today we're going to be talking about how to succeed in an online graduate program. Now, students at ACU come from all walks of life at many different ages and many different places geographically. We have students in China, we have students in India, in Africa, and in the United States, and you may be participating at the beginning of your day, at the end of your day, in the middle, or all of the above. And so what we've done for today is we talked with 15 faculty members and asked for their tips about how to succeed in an online graduate program, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So with no further ado, let's dive in. First, we clustered these tips into the theme of timing, place, and focus. First tip, control your environment. What does that mean? Well, one way to start is to find a place where you can work that's as free of distractions as you can. Quiet is a good place to start. Some people work really well in a cafe, provided that they place their chair someplace where they're not seeing people because visual distractions will throw them off. Other people like to be in the middle, but because they can keep their attention on the screen, and there's just enough where they have to focus a little bit where it helps them engage. The point is to find something that for you counts as relatively free of distractions. And we realize that your work or home situation may require some trade-offs there. Some people will go into a library. Some people will ask other people to be quiet for a given interval of time, which has different results with small children sometimes. But still, do what you can to make your environment conducive to your working and being focused. Now, those distractions can be many types. They could be external, outside of you, like noise or sound, people, pets. We had one student I was working with who had a very rambunctious dog. And eventually I asked, I know you've rushed home from work here. I've got time. Would you like to take your dog out for a quick walk? Now, it turned out because the dog had been home all day, they were waiting to be let outside to do their business and, stretch their legs and everything that. So, by their taking some time there, the dog was much calmer and more focused. The student was able to concentrate on their work, and everything went better and faster. And so if that's something where a little time and attention will let you have that environment for a period of focus, awesome. Take some steps towards that. Distractions can also be internal, things on your mind, worries, other tasks. Probably one of the greatest offenders of our time right now is the smartphone. Any phone that vibrates or beeps, there's a temptation to check it. That is hard to put aside. But especially when it's something that you've read and there's something you want to do, and if you don't respond to it then and there, you may have extra trouble focusing on the task at hand. So, two ways to address that. One is to do that thing so that you can then be more focused. Another thing is to prevent those distractions from intruding, at least until you're done, by putting your phone onto silent or ideally do not disturb so you won't even get pop-ups or vibrations. Another tip, find your most productive times. For now. We do not live in an ideal world. There are lots of things that, little time, money, space, you could find a place that's your ideal and stick to it. It might be your second best or third best, but it's better than the default. And so what we want is something that lets you do your work better, if not necessarily in perfect concentration, quiet, and everything. So start by asking yourself, do you work better if you're, say, snatching a quick break at work? Oh, hold on, I've got my 15 minutes here. Let me sit down and I can read these pages. I can write a one-paragraph discussion post, perhaps. Do you work better if you, say, take a lunch break and no one else is bothering you? A degree program is not forever. So while it might be fun to go out with the coworkers or to hang out in the cafe, if that's the time where you get to check off one of the things that you have to do that week, that might be something where you say, okay, this isn't forever. It's just for this part of the degree. I need to get through this course, and this is when I'm most effective. That's especially true if you're in a seasonal profession like teaching, where you would expect to have certain breaks, which you're not bound to always having your lunch at your desk with your computer. But while you are following these other seasonal demands, it may be more helpful to take that time now. Some people, it's not so much the setting, it's the mindset. And that question is one that you have to answer individually. But if you find that when the clock is ticking, you've got a limited pool of time, and that helps you do everything focused and do it efficiently, knowing that about yourself to make sure that other things aren't competing with that time as you work against the clock, well, that's a good thing to know for planning purposes. As an example, I will often be writing grant applications and reports for something that tend to be due at the end of the business day. And so I will set aside a certain number of hours, usually for a grant application, and I will tell people, this is my time, please do not bother me. Now, is that a perfect thing? No. So you should always set aside a little bit more time than you think you might need, because life does happen, and work emergencies happen and everything. But what that does is when you are able to set those things aside, you can say, all right, I'm not going to think about this, I'm not going to check my email or social media or whatever it is until you're done, and then work very efficiently for that period of time. For those of you who might be married, this is something where negotiation with the spouse or partner might be especially helpful. Oh, could you please take the kids to the park? I need this hour to do this because of this deadline. Please don't come back early unless you really have to. I would like this hour to do X. And then you can do all the other negotiation and balancing that always happens in parenting later, but saying, okay, here's the reason why I need this. I will be able to demand less time if I have this uninterrupted, undistracted, etc. And for some people, that's when everyone else is asleep, possibly including their partner or spouse, but often involving the children or a pet who's turned in for the night. Another tip, be proactive with the discussions. Almost every online course at ACU has a discussion board component. And this is something where if you do it earlier, you will have an easier, faster time for all sorts of reasons. Starting with, most of them are linked to course readings. So if you do that reading, might as well write about it while it's fresh on your mind. It might be something where you feel you need some time to process it. Well, you can make that part of your discussion post. Shouldn't be all of it, but if you say, gosh, these ideas are challenging, you can write about that in your response, as well as incorporating discussing specifics of their argument, their thesis, or whatever else that you're required to do as part of the prompt. It's also a lot easier to say something new when most of your classmates haven't chimed in yet. If you've ever taken a seminar where you go around and everyone says something about things, it's harder to do that the more people are involved. And the same thing if you are waiting until, let's say, a Thursday, day 3 of the course. You're waiting till Thursday to post, and all of your classmates have chimed in already. It's hard to add something to that discussion because there's so much that other people have said already. So if you are logging in on Tuesday, let's say hypothetically Tuesday on your lunch break, you come in and you log on. Well, most classes is people are waiting till the end of the day. So that might be something where that helps you get your argument in early. When you have fresh thoughts, they're not shaped by others, and they're not shaped by not wanting to feel like you are duplicating what someone else has said. Speaking of which, let's talk about content, originality, and the contributions that you are making in these courses, through your assignments, your discussion, and for our professional degree programs as you apply these things in the workplace. First of all, make sure that what you're doing has a goal of convincing your readers. I'm not saying make your readers think exactly the way that you do, but if you're arguing for, say, a policy change, or arguing that a verse of the Bible is important and applicable to society, well, tell us why and how. Why should people take notice? Why should people believe you? And make it an argument. State a position and back it up with both evidence and logic. Now, there are multiple types of arguments, and for some contexts, you will be doing things like making an emotional argument. I have plenty of students who have gone through the healthcare administration track, and they are arguing, in part because of their background and who they are, that the humanity that is all too often missing from medical transactions, medical billing, from the coldness of the experience that people get that can cause them to not seek out healthcare in a timely fashion. That might be something where you feel passionate about it, and part of your argument is emotionally based, and saying, this is not right, this makes me feel sick. When I think about this, how can we do this to someone else? And that is a wonderful thing to have, but you probably want to not have that be the only thing, because a strong argument will use more than one piece of evidence, use more than one type of argumentation, and therefore people for whom one argument is stronger than another will also be reached. When you're trying to convince your readers, make sure that you bring in the guns. Or if you prefer an alternate metaphor, make sure that you show that you're standing on a strong foundation. You don't and should not be trying to reinvent the wheel or replace the wheel with something else. Show us the published sources that support your statements, and do that with formal citations. You want to also keep things direct and concise. Say things in just as many words as you need. Don't repeat things unnecessarily, because then you'll have the room, especially for an assignment with a word maximum, then you'll have the room for more evidence and citations for the things that need them, especially if it's something controversial or just plain new, or a topic that requires more explanation or orientation. So here's a classic example. If you were writing about a educational topic, you probably don't need to explain the whole history of the United States public education system, except for the parts that are directly applicable to what you're doing. If you're working on special education, great. You're going to be dealing with the history of public education in the United States, for the most part, for things from the last 75 years or so. Much of it newer because of changes or updates to the law. Might you have a little bit for orienting context? Sure. But if you're doing a professional master's or professional doctorate, where the idea is you're learning how to apply these things in practice, you're probably going to be dealing with things that are going on right now. And that's a whole lot more focused than, let me tell you about 200 years of U.S. public education history. Originality. This is something that people can have a lot of, we'll say, hand-wringing over this. The idea that they want to come up with a thought that is wholly original. Well, whether you can never be wholly original or not is more of a philosophical question than anything else. I will say that we want your writing to be original, in the sense that these are your words that you have created for this occasion. But the ideas should be things where you're grounding with citations. Tell us where that came from. It's actually liberating to say, oh, someone else said that, because it's then not just you making the argument, it's you and that other source or sources that you are citing. So if you're, say, trying to convince someone that hiring math teachers who have professional training, collegiate training in math pedagogy is important, cite some authors who say that to back you up. If there's research research on that, awesome, cite that research to back you up. And that it's not you're just saying, well, I think it would be a good idea, but these people did a study and they found that this helped. So therefore, we should do this because the district has said improving our math scores is a priority. And do remember that other writers were writing not for your specific situation, but they were writing for different times, places, and conditions other than your own. So their exact words are probably not the best thing for the specific argument you're making in your paper or in your discussion post. So make sure that you paraphrase more than you quote. And I'll give you a couple examples of how and why that's important. So let's say that you were writing a paper on physician compensation. You'll find a lot of people writing about that and weighing in about different things. But if you went back, say, 5 years, you'd find a lot of people saying, oh, hey, family medicine doctors are very poorly paid. They often make less than half of what a general surgery a doctor will make after residency in the first year. Well, that was true 5 years ago. Now, after the retirements of the COVID-19 pandemic years, the starting salaries for those professions are actually pretty much equal. And so, even though that may have been true then, it's not true now. Now, similarly, you might have someone who is writing about your district a year ago. Well, if you're writing about your district now, there's probably some things that are the same, but also a lot that are different, especially if the reason you're writing is a problem hasn't been solved despite attempts to solve it, or there's been administrative turnover, a new leadership model, a new compensation model. Lots of things change all the time. And if in doubt, cite your source. That even helps you out because if you're ever asked a question or asked to expand something, you know where that information is. Contribution. So it's helpful to keep in mind that most assignments aren't asking you to only or simply summarize. So with that in mind, think about what you, as the writer, are adding in this broader discussion or understanding. And a lot of that is going to be about your specific context. If you were to read, let's say, a piece on the biblical interpretation of Scripture written by, let's say, a pastor in a major city in New England, that's one context. The context in your city or town or village in Texas could be very different. Probably there's going to be a different demographic mix. Probably the socioeconomic stuff is going to be different. People's education certainly will map differently. And so what are you adding for your specific discussion? And that might be adapting a lot of things or showing, hey, even though these are different, this is something that is still useful because, and then give us your reasons. So make sure to tell the reader why or how something is useful. Make sure that your arguments are explicit rather than implicit, so we know without a doubt what the connections you are making are. This next set is about engagement, how to be active in your education, to have a better experience overall, to really make this something where the online medium enhances your experience. And the first thing is to make things fun. If you've ever had a class in an online Zoom lecture, there can be a lot of passive engagement where you have the alienation of the voice is coming from a speaker or your headphones, and then the speaker's face is small on screen and things like that. But that doesn't mean that things can't be fun. Provided you're keeping it reasonably on topic and not unduly distracting other people, it's actually good to have a lively chat in the course, to share things irrelevant, which could be links, to message people, ask people questions. What do they mean by that? to offer explanations in turn. And things like this make it not only more active, but more fun. And because you're thinking about how to apply the knowledge, you tend to learn, retain, and understand it better. It's also helpful to have direct questions that you are sending to specific classmates. And this can happen on the discussion board. Don't just say, well, what do people think? Or, it's not clear. Ask someone a question. If you're responding to some things and you're not sure what so means, ask them. Hello, so-and-so. Could you please say more about this? I'm not sure what you meant, or I would like to know more about your thoughts on this. Great. Same thing, if people are directing questions to you, whether it's classmates or teachers, make sure you respond, and ideally in a as timely fashion as you can. Find something outside of the classroom that you have in common with someone else. There are some programs where people go through as a tight cohort. 20 people go in, 20 people come out at X time. But a lot of graduate education may start that way, but there are changes, rearrangements along the way. It might be you switch advisors. It might be you switch groups. It might be that someone steps out for a semester and then comes and rejoins later and are now paired with a different group of people. Well, have conversations. Find a common interest. A great thing to do at the start of a course is to say why you are interested in the topic of the course and use this as an introduction to yourself. For me, I have a PhD in music and English. How did I end up teaching in a nursing program? Well, that's something that has a lot to do with my experiences living in the third world and seeing barriers that people are having to access healthcare. Share a little bit about your life story, what brought you here. You'll probably find some people who have something in common. I've seen students connect over pets, over being parents, over work, places they've lived, hobbies, reading, sometimes connecting over frustrations. That's fine. It's good to find people who feel the same way that you do about things and to be able to talk with them. Which brings us to our next tip. Find a buddy. Finding a friend, colleague, companion in this educational journey makes a huge difference. You could have someone who you're just sending periodic encouraging messages. Hey, we've got 5 days left before this term is over. That's great. We all need that sent sometime. You might also find yourself venting with your buddy or sharing memes with them. That's great too. We all need some relief, and something that in a brick and mortar program does, having a student lounge or student office is a way for people to be a little bit less formal and to do things that say, that test or that paper, or oof, my grades, or that's the last time I'll send that thing in at 2 a.m. I had so many typos, I don't want to do that again. And be able to share stories with other people who've been in situations like that before. Now, it's awfully tempting to say, well, I'm just going to power through this program till I'm done. But it's also important to know that we all need periodic breaks. How long that break will be, that kind of depends on you. But a lot of people find that if they take at least a quick break to stand up and stretch every 20 to 30 minutes, that they feel better and that they are more focused when they sit back down. Now, other people, that might be, they work for an hour and then they go walk around the block and then they sit down and they're focused for another hour. Great. Find the time that works well for you, but make sure you take breaks periodically. You will feel better and you'll be more focused. Also, we kind of touched on this before, but do remember to proofread and spell check before submitting weekly assignments. I can tell you that there's a great number of assignments that I've seen over the years where someone was working late into the night, they posted their assignment late into the night, and the next morning they looked at it, realized that passages did not make sense, and then they asked me if they could submit their assignment over again now that they looked at it by light of day. So remember to proofread and spell check, and if you're working late into the night, you probably want to look at it in the morning to make sure that you've done your due diligence communicating clearly. And last but not least, remember, you're not in this alone. Whether you are coming to the Online Writing Center, to the library, meeting with an instructor, meeting with a student navigator, or other person along the way, we're here to help. That's true of your classmates, your teachers, staff, and faculty. We all want you to succeed. And so if you are in need of help, even if it's just a vent sometimes, especially if it's to get a second set of eyes and some perspective or advice or other input, do. So, if in doubt, ask, or ask where to go, and we're happy to help along the way. So just to recap things a little bit, we talked about a few different clusters of ideas. We began with talking about timing, place, and focus, starting with controlling your environment, how to find your most productive times, at least for right now, because we live in the now, how to be proactive with things like the discussions to use your time more efficiently. We talked about content, originality, and the contribution that you are making in your writing, in your participation in these courses, to make sure that you are working to convince your readers that you are making your own writing original, but not trying to redo everything. Original, but grounded in a knowledge of what has been said or done before. And about how your contribution should be not just summarizing, but adding something to discussion, which could be about making a case of why something before is still applicable to the exact conditions that you're in, whether you're living, working, or otherwise. And then we finished with a number of tips about how to engage in the course. So there you have it. We have talked for this last few minutes about tips from faculty about how to succeed in an online graduate program. If you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can schedule an appointment through my.acu.edu or go to the Online Writing Center website.